I am Ann Smith, and I am the Oskaloosa Chamber Director. I just want to thank everybody for coming. I'm going to try a joke out on you guys this morning, okay? Are you ready? Okay. So, and this is not directed at anybody, so this is just kind of an icebreaker. A thief stuck a pistol in a man's ribs and said, "Give me your money." The gentleman, shocked by the sudden attack, said, "You cannot do this. I'm a United States Congressman." The thief said, "In that case, give me my money." Okay, I just want to take a moment before I introduce our moderator. If you are an elected official, I would like for you to stand up and just introduce yourself and then what position you hold. So that way we know who's who in the community. Anybody?
Back there.
Where?
My name is George Cadex, I'm the mayor of University Park.
Okay. Thanks, George.
I'm Terry Ford, trust me.
I'm going to bring you the microphone, okay?
Oh, there.
Terry Moore, trustee on Treasury.
Great. Do we have somebody over here? Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Our moderator today is Mayor Dick Crooksville, and he is going to lead the rest of the show.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. You may remember from our typical tradition is to have the color guard come in and present the colors. We don't have them here this morning, and so I'm going to go to Plan B here. If you would stand with me, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance little slides up against the wall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We also want to take a moment to recognize the people who are making the event possible today. And it's a fairly big list. First of all, thanks go to the Oskaloosa Chamber and Development Group for organizing the event, Ann Smith. We also want to thank Smoky Row for letting us have the event here. We pack the house most Saturday mornings when this happens, and we're doing it again. Midwest One, we thank Sandy Bailey and the crew over there for providing the free coffee this morning. It's delicious as always. CRI, we thank them for doing the video of the coverage of this. We thank KBOE, KMZN for doing their radio coverage. Oskaloosa Herald and Oski News for their reporting of the event. The Daily Auditorium for the sound system that we'll be using today. And Oskaloosa Schools for the very microphones that we're working with. And so we acknowledge their help on all of this as well. And if you're curious, the person running the board, Andy McGuire, has a birthday today. And so if you have the opportunity to buy him a cupcake, if we all work together, we can get 70 or 80 of them his direction. You're welcome. And so, yeah, the reason you're here isn't to listen to me, kind of big surprise. So I want to introduce our speakers today. We have Senator Ken Rosenblum, we have Representative Guy Vanderlinden, and also Representative Larry Sheets. And so, well, why don't we start with any opening comments that you have to make regarding the way the week's going and anything you want us to know ahead of time.
Is this thing on? Well, I would open with a joke, and I just had sensitivity training, and I thought probably shouldn't do it. Well, thanks for inviting us back again. This is my favorite forum. I think it's the best one. This country has been through the throes of a major epidemic with no known cure and some pretty scary symptoms. It's called the Trump Derangement Syndrome, or TDS, which is not to be confused with STD. We survived 1 year of this TDS, and now are confronted with fake news that we're changing IPERS this session, and that's just not true. IPERS is actuarially sound. It's got 81.4% funded. It's well managed. Remains one of the most sound pension systems in the entire country. Besides having the lowest unemployment in 17 years, Iowa's racked up numerous accolades recently, including the third best managed state, the best state for middle-class families, the best state for retirees, the best in high school graduation rates, and the fourth best in K-12 funding. Iowa has invested an additional $735 million in K-12 education since 2011. I know we came in 2012, so you can see we've been working on that. And it's a total annual investment now of $3.2 billion, which is 45% of the state's entire budget. We've begun the task of supporting farmers to reduce the nutrients leaving Iowa's waterways by passing Senate File 512. This citizen legislator is honored to have served during these times and hopes those who follow me will be keen to serve you and not make it a profession. This is my last year in Des Moines, and I thank you for that.
Well, good morning, all, and thanks again for coming. As Larry said, this is by far the best run of these that I'm aware of in the state, so thank you very much. We're just getting started in the legislature this year, and the first thing in front of us, unfortunately, is the appropriation again. And this, I think, is the result of, there's some misperceptions out there about why we're doing this. The reason we're doing it is because we rely on the Revenue Estimating Conference to guess how much revenue we're going to get. And they have been remarkably unsuccessful over the last several years in the wrong direction every time. So although Iowa's revenue from taxes and fees and what have you is actually larger than ever, it's not as large as the REC thought it would be, and therefore we're going to have to take some money back. That will be the first thing on our plates, I believe. The next thing will be setting state supplementary aid for education, and once that's done, I think we will get on to other things. Most importantly to me, as chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, is the potential for tax reform. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to do that. But we got to get these other things off our plate up front. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for coming. This is the first of a number of forums. Representative Vanderlyn gets a few Saturdays off. Larry and I get to go to Ottumwa and Albion and Centerville, so every Saturday morning we're somewhere with this. Yeah, we're underway. The second year of the General Assembly, which means there was some carryover legislation from last year, so the very first day we were scheduling subcommittee hearings and that sort of thing. Obviously, Representative Vanderlyn mentioned the budget. I'm sure there's questions out here on that. Excuse me, and we'll deal with those. For me personally, because of my committee assignment and my focus of a lot of my work has been on natural resources and environment, and I am excited that we passed Senate File 512 through the House earlier this week. I think that's a substantial, it's the most significant legislation with respect to water quality in the history of the state, folks. Over the next 12 years, it will direct $126 million to point source pollution. Point source meaning municipalities and industry where there's a pipe coming out of the ground that has nutrients in it. $156 million will go to non-point pollution, which is agriculture and nature. So, and that'll be primarily used in cost share programs. So that money will be leveraged by landowners' investment in their land. So that's a total of $282 million over the next 12 years. And then it sunsets, it goes away. My sense is, my judgment is that subsequent legislatures down the road can see how well we were doing on that progress and make decisions based on policy and funding at that point. So with that, I'll make one other mention, there's a young lady in here that I see every day in Iowa Senate. Emily Peters is sitting here, and I didn't ask permission to introduce her. She's serving as a clerk this year for Senator Joe Bolton from the People's Republic of, from Iowa City. And I haven't asked anybody about her politics, but if you ever need some redirection, come and see me. So, but she's an example of a lot of great people that work there, a lot of great young people. We have a new bevy of pages. We have new clerks. There's so many people, most of them remarkable in their own way, or they wouldn't be up there, in my judgment. So, Emily, it's good to see that Oskaloosa face there with in the Senate chamber every day. So with that, we'll take your questions.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dick, ready for questions. You may remember the ground rules. I'll remind everybody of them. We've been told over and again that this is the premier event in the state. We have a larger turnout of people than any other place. We have a much more respectable discussion, and I believe we do that by keeping it knowledgeable as to who's speaking and what their perspective is. And so when I come to you with the microphone, I'll ask that you introduce yourself with your name and where you're from. So that way we kind of know what geographic perspective you bring, and then if it's important to know, then also what you do for a living. And then also be polite and courteous with your questions, and then keep the comments and other noise down so other people can hear. From time to time, the acoustics here are not the greatest. If somebody has an exotic cup of coffee that they're needing to grind the beans for or something to that effect. So anyway, with that, do we have anyone who would like to start us off this morning?
Hi, my name is Jill Van Utrecht. I am from the New Sharon area, and I'm here today as a concerned parent. This is my 6-year-old son, Ethan. I don't know if you can see or not, but ever since the age of 2, Ethan was diagnosed with extensive hearing loss, which has required him to wear hearing aids. Back in 2013, when we started this journey, the EDI Fund was in place, which is the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Program. His hearing aids at that time cost $3,800, and the EDI Fund provided the money that allowed us to purchase the hearing aids for him. This is something he's going to have the rest of his life, but as you know, the EDI funding was cut due to budget constraints in there. My questions for you are, what are we going to do to bring back the EDI funding to help kids like Ethan? Insurance companies in the state are not required to cover hearing aids or other stuff related to that. They consider hearing aids to be cosmetic. To me, that's not the case. Why would a kid want to wear something that makes him stand out to be different? So this is something he's in need for the rest of his life. So I want to know, where are we at with getting the EDI funding back? If that's not an option, we need to have some legislation passed that mandates insurance companies, hey, you got to pony up, you got to pay help to cover costs for hearing aids in children. There's currently 22 states that have taken that initiative and made it a requirement. But as a state that prides itself, as the first speaker mentioned about where we're at with funding for schools and that on our children, we are doing a great disservice to the children with hearing loss in the state of Iowa.
Any response?
Thank you for your question, and I will tell you, I don't know where that funding, which budget that is in. Was that a recent cut? Was that a cut last year?
Yeah, we found out in July when we had his last ENT appointment that the funding was gone.
What I would encourage you to do, and we do this for a lot of our constituents, send an email if you have access to that. And then I can get the staff and chase that down and see learn about it. And then we go from there. But that's one of our jobs, is to advocate on behalf of our constituents. We can't always give you the answer you want, but we can understand and maybe, and it'll influence some of our judgments going forward as well. So please send an email to one of us or all of us.
Other questions this morning?
Good morning. My name is Michelle Wayne, and I'm here from Oskaloosa. I am a paraeducator in the Oskaloosa Elementary School, and it's a great community to live in, and I've raised both my children. I have a 21-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter who will be graduating this year. My 21-year-old son is attending Grandview University. His name's Jordan, and a lot of people here might know Jordan. He is wheelchair bound. He has muscular dystrophy. He was born with this, and he has excelled in every area. He's an exceptional student, an honor student. He earned a scholarship to Grandview University, and he is now a junior there. And he has been able to go because of the CDAP program with Medicaid and DHS. And he has 9 care providers that help him through his day, get him up in the morning, get him ready for school, take him to class, and he does all his own homework. He's studying graphic design. The problem is happening right now is this transition with Medicaid. And this happened last year where he was still on the DHS family side of it, and now they're transitioning him to, I guess it's one of the managed cares that's left, targeted management, case management. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The problem that's going on is they want to discontinue his pay that he's able to pay his care providers. It's already a difficulty for him to hire people, and now they want to reduce the payment, and we are afraid that in his junior year of this success, which is very rare for this kind of disability, a person to have this disability, attend college, that his funding will be reduced and he will not be able to graduate from Grandview University, because if he cannot have care providers there, it is inaccessible for him to do that. The school is very accessible, has been around every little area that he needs help with. He has an accessible apartment, and he's able to get around very well on his own, but he is completely dependent on somebody to help him get up and dressed and ready for his day. And we need help finding out who, if you can just direct me to who I can contact. We've been getting around the different people I've been contacting. I've had to go to the IME, which is the Iowa Medicaid Enterprise in Des Moines. I'm getting nowhere finding answers on how to help my son finish his schooling with care providers, and I need numbers and emails of people to contact.
I'll give you the same answer I just gave this parent here. It's the same way. I've a number of times dealt with similar situations. We know who the legislative liaison is for those respective companies. So again, if you want to send me an email, we can start there and we can make connections.
And your email is?
Okay, good question. We all have the same email address with different names.
Okay.
And mine is ken.rosenbaum. I'm not going to bore everybody with the spelling, but
Okay.
at legis, L-E-G-I-S, .iowa spelled out, .gov, G-O-V, all lowercase.
Okay.
And if it's Guy Vanderman or Larry Sheets, same format, and that's how we do a lot of work.
Okay. Is there a person that you know within the Medicaid system that, I mean, do you think I'm going to get results emailing you?
Yes,
I need the results. We need it now because they sent me, actually they didn't even send me a notice. They emailed me yesterday saying that his skilled level of care is going to be discontinued. And that means that his amount of pay that he can pay his CDAC providers will be reduced drastically. And nobody's going to want to work for $2 an hour. So we need to think, and they're giving me a notice of 1 week that this is going to happen. I don't think that's acceptable, and I have not received anything in the mail on any notice, no letters or anything. So I need results like today.
Michelle, the person that I contact when I get a call like this or an email is David Heaton. chair of Health and Human Services in the House, and he's been very helpful in solving a lot of these problems. I have 2 telephone numbers for him.
Okay.
The first is his home number. 319-9342.
Okay.
And his mobile number is 319-4692. And just the courtesy of telling him that I directed you toward him, so that he doesn't think that you're just someone calling
So, yeah.
to harass him.
Okay, appreciate it very much. Okay, thank you.
Other questions this morning?
Nathan Wilson, Oskaloosa. For Senator Rosenboom, I was curious, how do you think that your experience in agriculture and farming impacted your support of the water quality bill? And then for the others, what is one hope that you have for this bill, and what is one fear that you may have for this water quality bill?
Well, thank you. I'm trying not to be the wind-up doll. This is I could talk all day and I won't. But your question was about my experience in agriculture. I'll put it this way. For 6 years I've been saying the same thing. And I'll repeat that right now. I say that the narrative is in Iowa our water quality is terrible and it's getting worse. And this is especially for the benefit of the younger generation here. Our water quality is terrible, it's getting worse. And I reject that narrative. I say our water quality is fine and it's slowly getting better. And I can document that in any number of different ways. However, I always end with these words, but we gotta keep working at it. We expect the world's population to be 9 billion people by the year 2050. Iowa agriculture is has a huge impact on feeding that world population. So we need to keep growing what we grow here, but we need to do that. We have a nutrient-rich, blessed with a lot of rainfall environment in Iowa. That's what makes us who we are agriculturally. But that rainfall means we have a leaky landscape. So we've done a pretty good job over the last 4 or 5 decades with soil erosion. And that helps with phosphorus runoff. What we haven't done so good at is nitrogen. And the last number of years, have learned how to control that better. So you hear terms like cover crops, bioreactors, saturated buffers, wetlands, a whole lot of oxbows, a whole lot of different practices and structures that we can use to control nitrate runoff into our rivers and streams. So that's why on a cost share basis, Iowa's farmers will be able to implement hopefully more of those practices going forward. And we can begin to, again, the sky's not falling, our water's not terrible, but we're going to keep ensuring that that's the case and maybe hopefully move those numbers down.
So is there anything in particular that you're fearful of with this legislation?
Oh man, fearful of. Well, to hear some people speak, I'm the problem. I find it ironic that the guy that kind of led the charge in the Senate on this the last 3 years now is the guy that's not done enough or has gone the wrong way on this. I don't get it. I don't understand that. What could go wrong? People talk about accountability. They're concerned about accountability. We have a long history of accountability in our cost share programs in this state. We have good people at the Department of Agriculture and at the DNR that will administer these programs. So if you want to take a negative view, it's spending $282 million taxpayer dollars over the next 12 years. For some, that's a negative. But in the interest of protecting our resource and our environment in this state, I think it's a good investment. And keep in mind that Iowa farmers have spent $2 billion of their own dollars the last 10 years on these very same things. So it's not like they're not doing their own part. So that's probably not a very good answer, Dave, but I'll try again if it comes back.
Other questions?
Morning, gentlemen. Gary Cash from here in Oskaloosa, happily retired. I have a question for Representative Vanderlyn. It may not have been reported widely here locally, but I read where you voted against this measure. So I wonder if you could elaborate for us why you voted against it and give us a rationale for it.
Sure. I thought I was going to answer the other gentleman's question, which was what I see, the good about it and bad about it. This actually started last session, and the Senate had the bill and the House had a bill. What I thought was going to happen last spring was that the House and the Senate would sit down in conference committee and work out a compromise between the two bills. And it was very close to the end of the session, and due to a number of things, not the least of which was we were all anxious to get out of there, it never happened. But the Senate bill remained alive in the House for this session. And it came to the floor on Tuesday, I believe, and we talked about it. And I still was of the opinion that we could improve upon the Senate bill by going to conference. So I voted to what we call insist on the House side in order to force that to go to conference. And that didn't happen. So I voted against the bill. I still think we can improve upon the Senate bill, and the floor manager of the bill in the House pretty much promised that this is not the end of water quality for this year. So my hope is that we can improve upon the Senate bill, and my fear is that we won't.
Other questions?
My name is Liz Colton. I live in Oskaloosa. I'm a minister, and I am opposed. Well, I guess I should say I support the separation of church and state. And I know, thank you. I know that currently, Mr. Sheets, you have co-sponsored a file to subsidize private schools. You're shaking your head. Do I have that wrong? But
I thought you were talking about the bill, the different bills.
Pardon me?
I thought you were talking about HF 2031.
Well, I don't know the number. But I want to say to all of you that I think that is really unconstitutional, that public schools are there for all our children, and that is where our money needs to be, supporting public education. So I'd like to hear from any of you who would like to comment on that as to why that seems to be a good idea. Thank you.
Well, let me first address HF 2031, which is a bill that suggests that school boards have the authority and the right to be able to provide an elective that includes the influence of the Bible on American society for the purpose of being able to understand who we are and why certain things exist. For example, if you look at the dollar bill, you'll see "In God We Trust." If you visit the U.S. Supreme Court, you'll see on the south wall frieze Moses holding the Ten Commandments. The U.S. Capitol building includes the Congressional Prayer Room, quote, "to provide a quiet place where individual representatives and senators may withdraw to seek divine strength and guidance." It's a stained glass window, bears the words, "Preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust." From its founding, America has been heavily influenced by the Bible's messages and principles. Yet many, if not most people, are unaware of the Bible's central role in the U.S. civic life. And so this bill is for the purpose of educating people what the influence has been of that Bible on our society. It does not recommend a faith, it does not disparage a faith, it basically is a historical elective. And that's the first thing. Now, the second question was, do I believe in separation of church and state? The Baptists wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson requesting that the United States government not do something like England did to create an Anglican church, a church that the state supports, a church that the state requires. Thomas Jefferson replied that there will be a separation, a wall of separation between state and church. That was to defend the church rather than defend the government from the church. So yes, I believe in separation of church and state, but I do not believe that the beliefs of the people who form the government are excluded from the actions of the government.
Certainly, I believe in the principle of separation between church and state. I have not seen this House File 2031, but from Larry's description of it, I wouldn't support it.
Hi, I'm Susie Card from Pell, and I work for the Iowa State Education Association. And I think her question was vouchers. I don't think I heard any answers there. But the Senate File 2091 was introduced, and that would allow appropriations of roughly $4,100 per student to use over 12 years. And that would actually end up being about $175 million in today's dollars to follow kids to private schools, home schools. Where's that money coming from? We're talking about not funding public education. We're talking about cutting community colleges by $5.4 million. Where is this money coming from?
Susie, could you please go back and reference what legislation did you, I didn't hear part of that or didn't remember part of
It's
that.
Senate File 2091.
Tell me what that says. I
It was
don't know.
introduced by Mark Sheldon.
Oh, well, if it's Sheldon bill, I don't know if I want to try to answer that or not. I honestly don't know. I haven't seen that bill. But the greater question, I think, that the last two have asked is about funding, providing funding for students or families that choose not to use public schools. And I do feel strongly about that. I'm supportive of that going forward. To your immediate question about where the money's going to come from, I don't have an answer because we don't have any money, extra money right now. So everything that we're talking about, I think, has to be talked, it has to be addressed in the context of we recognize we have budget issues. So it would be irresponsible for us to promise whatever amount of money is something that we can't properly fund. But the greater question of funding school or students, I strongly believe that the money should follow the students and families as opposed to the school district. I did bring it with me. Some of these left at the Capitol, which I brought. During the first week, we listened to the governor's condition of state address, and the next day we listened to the judiciary from Mark Cady, the Supreme Court Chief Judge. And he recalled, in a different context, he recalled an 1856 Supreme Court decision in Iowa that talked about equality for schools, or for pupils rather than attended schools. In those days, there were black schools and there were white schools. That's what this Supreme Court decision addressed. And they said that the state cannot force a child to go to this school or that school, that they all must be treated equally. I'm not doing a very adequate job I will bring that at some point. I will read you the judicial decision.
Why don't you read the bill first? Okay, why don't you do your job first and read these bills? I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Let me respond to that. There's legislation all the time that gets introduced that appeals to certain people and really lights the fire of opposition amongst other people. And I normally don't promise anything about specific legislation, but I can just about guarantee you that that bill has no chance whatsoever of passing the legislature this session.
The Senate file numbers are very far away from the governor's recommendations, and the House position is much closer to the governor's recommendation. I'm sure that the numbers that you're talking about, the reductions, aren't going to exist in the House file.
Okay, I moved around on you. I'm over by the windows now.
Yeah, this is Ken. You mentioned about the water quality bill. That's going to be another line item or somebody else or another hand getting into the kitty. And you mentioned a little bit ago that there's no money available. Where's this money coming from, number one? And number two, what happened to the I Will Trust Fund that would have supported that issue?
Good question. First of all, your first question is where does the money come from? I threw out a big number, $282 million. That's over 12 years. For this fiscal year 19 that we're going to start budgeting for once we deal with 18's budget, there's $4 million. This doesn't just all of a sudden show up at $27 million a year. That's not a wise way to ramp up a program. We need to do this properly. We need to ramp it up over time. So in fiscal year 19, it calls for $4 million. In the following year, $8 million, then $12 million. And that money all comes from sales tax now that's from, we pay sales tax on our drinking water, and it's diverting that money, so that's coming out of the general fund. That'll max out at $12 million a year going forward. In 2021, there's another $15 million a year that is currently gambling money. It's not general fund revenue. It is currently directed to repaying the Vision Iowa bonds, the Chet Culver projects. That retires in 21. And so in that fiscal year, we will start to redirect that $15 million of Vision Iowa funding to water quality funding. To the question about the I Will Fund, I'm fully aware of the 2010 referendum. Neither party has been willing to advance a bill that calls for increasing sales tax on Iowans. That's a view held by Republicans and Democrats alike. No one's ever championed that, and I'm not going to be the champion of that.
Old habits die hard. We used to always have to stand in this spot. My name is Diane Perkin Johnson. I'm an Oskaloosa resident. I'm a business owner. I'm an attorney. I'm a lifelong Republican. And I wanted to talk to you today about the budget. And my question is going to be what responsibility business has and what skin they're going to have in the game as we figure out spending moving forward. The appropriations for the current fiscal year and the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. We have reduced taxes to business in this state to the point that if you're a manufacturer and you don't sell to people in Iowa, you have no responsibility for income tax and you get money back through the R&D credit. Both tax programs that businesses in this part of the state and throughout the state have taken advantage of, and programs that have been beneficial to the company that I'm involved with. And when those programs were initially started, one of the things we looked at is that business needed to have additional revenue and cash so that they could reinvest in their communities. And I think we've seen that happen all over the place. We have recreation opportunities we haven't had. We have park opportunities we haven't had. We have entertainment facilities, auditoriums, school expansions, recreational facilities, athletic facilities. Those programs have worked, and businesses stepped up to the plate, been leaders in their communities, and reinvested those dollars. But we're now getting to the point where we're needing to cut funding to agencies and programs in the state that business can't replace. As businesses, as manufacturers in this state, we can't run the Department of Corrections. We can't go in and work at the prisons. We can't provide leadership and instructors in the community colleges that we need to educate our employees. We can't provide public health. We can't help the parents that talk to us today about their kids that are trying to get an education and become the employees that we want in the future. We, through the Senate this week, saw budget cuts that we're no longer taking the fat out of budgets, but are taking out the very services that we need to keep our communities safe, to keep our communities healthy, and removing services that business can't do through its leadership or through its employees or its donations. And so my question to you, as we look at balancing budgets, I'm a Republican. I believe in responsible spending. I believe in balanced budgets. But what skin are you going to ask businesses to have in this game? I don't hear any discussion about reducing the R&D tax credits. I don't hear any discussion about asking manufacturers to pay an income tax in the state so that we can help cover those services that we depend on. Unemployment is under 3% in Iowa. That says to us as businesses that the only people left to hire are the people that are not trained or able to carry on full-time jobs. We look to our community colleges to train those people, to get them prepared to work for us. You're again cutting the community college budgets or recommending that through the de-appropriation recommendations. We can't replace those services that you're now asking be cut. And we depend on quality communities. We depend on a quality state if we're going to keep businesses here. People have to want to live in Iowa. They have to want to live in our communities if we're going to be able to hire them. So I ask you, what skin are you going to ask business to have in this game so that we can balance the budget?
And that's the second time I've heard the Senate bill being quoted as if it were passed. It has not, and it will not pass. That bill has got to be approved by the House. The House has already taken the position that the cuts in it are extreme, way beyond what the governor has asked for. And I think you should just wait and see what comes out of the House before being too concerned. As far as whether or not corporations pay taxes, the fact is that corporations that earn more than $250,000 a year pay the highest corporate income taxes in the nation at 12%. The next lowest is Pennsylvania at 9.99. I guess they were chicken to go to 10. So those tax credits, for the most part, are given to companies to induce them to come into a state that has very high taxes. And I would prefer, rather than giving benefits to companies to come in, I would much rather have it that the state of Iowa have a competitive corporate income tax to be able to compete with states that have zero or very low income taxes. And those states surround us except for Illinois. The other thing is that a corporate tax sounds like a good deal for people, but the fact is that when a corporation is taxed, there's a guy in the corporation, he's the chief financial officer. It's his job to make sure that the cost of doing business goes out the door with the product. So it becomes a sales tax, whether you like it or not. And you hope that it becomes a sales tax on people in a different state or a different country, but in fact it becomes a sales tax. If that doesn't work, then it becomes an issue for the company to do some cost reductions on the line that has the product that's not competitive any longer, which usually involves layoffs. And if that doesn't work, the company shuts down or moves to a different state. So when you tax a corporation, you're not really taxing the entity. What you're doing is you're putting burden on its ability to do business. The people who own the stocks in that company, they pay taxes on their dividends. But just taxing corporations is, is not the right way to build up the economy, and we need the economy to build up, to be able to support our schools, to be able to support our public safety. And we don't want to have preferential treatments, I agree, with companies to move in compared to the companies that are already here. Centerville lost Rubbermaid. 500 jobs in a city of 5,000 people was a disaster. So I don't recommend that kind of deal for any part of Iowa. I hope I've answered your question.
It's really easy to go after corporations because there's no face involved with it for the most part. So we tend to, those evil corporations. Those evil corporations in Iowa, as Larry pointed out, are already paying the highest rate of tax of any state in the country. Now, there are offsets to that make the effective rate less, but nevertheless, on paper, they're paying 12%. Tax credits are an interesting thing. The worst thing in my mind about tax credits is, as the legislature has handed those out over the years, we haven't done a very good job, or the Department of Revenue hasn't done a very good job of keeping track of, in essence, our checkbook. How many have we offered and when do they come in, and oh my gosh, how much are they really going to cost the taxpayer? So that's an issue. And I thought, given all the drama we got last year from the other party about tax credits and that we needed to do something, that maybe that could be a bipartisan issue. So I went to the ranking member on my committee this year and I said, Dave, how about give me a list of the tax credits that you think we can minimize or do away with? I could sense reluctance right away. That was on the first day of the legislature, and I still don't have a list. What I do have from Dave is 2 bills that would start 2 new tax credits. So I'm a little leery about their sincerity with wanting to do away with tax credits, but we will take a look at it. The other thing is that the governor, in her condition of the state address, said that she doesn't want to even address corporate tax cuts this year. And I suspect that we will probably go along with the governor. So I don't think there's going to be any easing of tax credits for corporations this year. They will continue to pay what they are paying. And frankly, we're not very competitive in trying to get new industry in here based on our high corporate tax rates.
I want to use the question Diane Murray went to take a little different angle to this. I've been in the legislature for 6 years now, and I increasingly find the need to go back and try to get a historical perspective for a lot of things we do, particularly budget items. And in that context, or under that heading, and you addressed the inability to maybe provide some services or whatever that we need. And by the way, courthouses are not going to close. Makes good headlines, it's not going to happen. But these kind of conversations come up. But I want to share with the group, in not any sort of finger pointing way, just an awareness. Medicaid obviously is a big issue in Iowa. It's a $1.5 billion issue in Iowa. But let's go back to 1987, 30 years ago. The medical assistance expenditures in Iowa were $140 million a year. That was 6% of our total budget. 97, 10 years later, they had more than doubled to $373 million, or 9% of our state's budget. Another 10 years, 2007, Medicaid or medical expenditures, $760 million, doubled again, 14% of the state's budget. Last year, in our budget, we budgeted $1.53 billion dollars for these services. 21% of our total budget. So, big picture wise, Iowans are investing more and more and more every year into these kinds of programs. But the narrative is we're never doing enough. So I don't have a political answer to that. What I'm encouraging each of you to do is to, as you analyze these kinds of things, and as you make comments to us, that you recognize the perspective, and maybe as a society we need to ask ourselves what role the government should play in this, and what role private citizens should play. So that's a very general thing, but I want you to know the numbers. We keep investing more and more and more, and my question for you is, when is enough enough?
Larry from Oskaloosa.
You hold it. Larry Lindsley, I'm just a little farmer, but I have a question. When we put these bills out with numbers on, does anybody know where those numbers come from, how they're put on there? Just a question.
No.
Good morning, Angela Lindsay, School Superintendent from North Nebraska Schools. First of all, I want to thank you for making it a priority to set supplemental state aid early. Those numbers are important in driving our budget and helping us make decisions before we have to have our budgets published on April 15th. The governor's recommending 1.5% increase in SSA in her budget. My question to you is, do you think that will be upheld? And if not, what do you think that number will be?
Don't look at me. Again, no. We will not do 1.5%, which we like to talk in terms of numbers instead of percent, $54 million. We will decide quickly. Amy Sinclair, as you know, chairs the Education Committee in the Senate, and as a mother and husband and administrator in the school system, she will press forward on that. So you'll know pretty soon. Most superintendents have been expecting 0% increase. I don't know if that's the right answer either, but it won't be $54 million. But I will take this opportunity to ask my House members to pass the Senate bill last year that we did, that over a 10-year period recognizes the inequities in transportation costs around the state. And that would be a good way for particularly our rural schools to get a boost. So that will be a consideration, I think, in the big picture as well.
Hi, I'm Chad Farner, and I live in Oskaloosa. I'm an educator. I appreciate what Senator Rosenblum just said about the core issue being at what point does the individual need to step up versus the government. And the only thing I could notice is two of the questions today were about some of our most vulnerable citizens, and you were willing to and able to try to address them as individuals. But when you have a population of hundreds of thousands of Iowans who face those same issues, it is impossible for us to address them as individuals. One of the benefits of living in society, of having a state, is that we can deal with it systemically. And so when we talk about Medicare cuts, privatization, and not funding public education to the extent that it could be funded, what we're really doing is deciding as a society, as a state, that we're going to leave that up to the individuals to deal with. And that simply can't happen. I mean, I can help out my neighbor, I can help out my friend, but if there's somebody in Burlington who is struggling, I can't help them. I think that there's a point that Diane tried to address it from the business point of view, I'll address it from the public point of view, that we live in a society where there are the haves and the have-nots, and I happen to be lucky enough to be in the part that's a have. And I would be more than willing to step up and give more to know that the have-nots have gotten the social supports that they need. As an educator, I see kids every day who are suffering not because of decisions they've made, but because of either bad luck or bad choices by their parents. And I think as a state, we need to be able to step up and help those children level the playing field so that they can grow up to be a successful adult.
I'm going to take one more question.
Terry Ford. I've been reading about ICN last week, and it's full of corruption. How much corruption is there in our state government?
I'll be happy to say I have no idea. Apparently, that is a problem, and there is a committee that's addressing that this next week, so I hope we get that particular one cleaned up. Anybody else knows about any, we'll be happy to listen.
I'll buy you a little bit. Guy's answers are right, we don't know, but one of the, most of us sat on one of the budget subcommittees. I sit on the smallest one, Ag and Natural Resources. But in that process, and we're having hearings virtually every day at this point in the session, I know the DNR folks, I know the IDALS folks really well because I talk to them regularly, I ask them questions, they testify. You get a sense on a personal level what they're like. It's easy for me because I'm dealing with really small departments. But my point is that others are going through the same process with others, some of them with DHS. That's in education, those are huge budgets. So I would hope that legislators have a sense of who they're dealing with and what their character is like and that sort of thing. So I think there is some oversight. Mine's very limited. Don't know anything about ICN in terms of the people. Obviously we had a crook at the top and that's unfortunate, but I would like to think that's by far the exception.
I have no idea how much corruption there is. I know Ken Rosenblum and I were accused once of lining our pockets with Koch brother money. I still haven't been able to find it, maybe he's got it all. Anyway, I think the problem was we had a government-run business that should have been private in the first place. Executive branch, not enough oversight. Fundamentally, we don't have a lot of oversight of bureaucracies, and bureaucracies tend to try to be independent of the legislative branch. Unfortunately, we do have oversight committees that try to straighten them up, and Ken's on one of those.
Okay, with that, we'll wind things up. Gentlemen, do you have any parting comments or conclusions you would like us to know? Okay?
Thank you.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of the premier events that happens in the state. We've got easily 80 or so odd people here today, and it's been a good conversation. We want to say thank you to the folks again for making it possible, the Oskaloosa Chamber Development Group, Smoky Row hosting the event, Midwest One, the free coffee, CRI for video coverage, KBOE, KMZN for their radio coverage, Oskaloosa Herald and Oski News for their reporting, and the Daily Auditorium and the Oskaloosa School System for the sound system we have today. And I want to say especially a thank you to everyone here in the room. You came to play. There were very intelligent questions, good comments, and I can tell you as a moderator, I sure appreciate that because it makes it interesting for everybody. And so with that, I thank you all for being here today. Go out and have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you.